We're all looking at the headlines at the same time, but so far, based on what you've seen, what stands out?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is an okay quarter. More interested in what the color commentary will be on the iPhone 12. Remember that we had pretty strong follow through into calendar even 1Q. So, we have pretty robust expectations for the next couple of quarters for iPhone 12 for sure. But this is steady as she goes from a delivery standpoint from an execution for 3Q perspective.
But the market isn't liking it much. 3.4% fall in a $1.9 trillion company is a lot of market cap. And it seems as though it's the iPhone number that is disappointing. Their fourth quarter iPhone revenue did come in slightly below expectations. And also the Greater China number as well. China revenue falling 29%. Does that sort of thing catch your eye?
A little bit. I mean, so one of the things that we have seen with the iPhone SE and our scenario numbers clearly were far more robust than the street. And obviously, they didn't pan out. But I think where expectations may have been off is that introduction of an iPhone SE could potentially offset some of the delay from a shipment perspective, strength that moved out from 3Q to 4Q because of the iPhone delay, launch delay. So that could have had an impact on a higher than usual impact on the quarter prior to the new model launch. So, the China, as much as you might want to say, oh, it's an emerging market, the lower end phones sell better there, that may not have held true for the iPhone SE. Historically, the iPhone SE has only lasted a couple of quarters. Yeah. And maybe this time around is not so different. Yeah. But I think the all-important, so that may explain some of the Greater China weakness, but the all-important number is the calendar 4Q, fiscal 1Q traction on the iPhone 12.
Yeah, interesting. And we should also point out, just to our viewers, of course, that fiscal fourth quarter was the one that ended at the end of September. So the new iPhone 12 sales, of course, would show up in the Q1 numbers once we get them. We are getting some headlines here crossing the wire from Apple's CFO, saying he is confident on China growth in fiscal Q1. So to your point, Anand, here, saying that grew double digits in China outside of the iPhone. Also commenting on the 5G, saying 5G iPhone is a once-in-a-decade opportunity, and apparently thinks that the larger iPhone 12 will do well in China. So I guess maybe he was watching what you were saying, Anand, and decided that you are.
So there's a couple of data points I do want to point out.
Go ahead,
please. Business, $14.5 billion, very, very solid. I mean, our numbers were 13 and change. I think most street was at 13 and change. So the fact that they came in very strong is a good sign. The other point is on the iPhone level versus the iPhone 12 comp. People think, because they introduced the iPhone mini at $100 cheaper. But if you look at the iPhone 12, like-for-like basis, may actually move the ASP a little higher. So this is where we're slightly different from the street in that we think that through 2021, calendar year 2021, ASPs actually go up, not down. So that could be a delta factor as well as we go through the year.
So, Anand, big picture, where is Apple these days in the context of competition? Because, of course, depending on the calendar and the product release and various this or that, iPhone revenue comes in a little bit lower or whatever than expectations. But at times, there have been fundamental questions about the robustness and the durability of the business. It doesn't seem like you hear very much about competition. It doesn't seem like you hear very much about margins these days. It doesn't seem like you hear very much about the web or anything like that. It seems like people are really confident in the ability of this of the business model. And I'm curious if you see anything in the numbers that should cause people to question any of that.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I think it points to the key difference between the Android ecosystem and the Apple iOS ecosystem. One is a closed one. There's only one maker of all phones, where the experience is very, very tightly controlled, right? So you drive technology to your cadence. Everything marches to the same sort of drumbeat, if you may, at Apple, which is the launch of the iPhone 12 or the launch of the latest flagship iPhone. Whether it's the iOS updates, whether it's EarPods, whether it's the surrounding product ecosystem. Versus if you look at the other products, it's sort of a cobbled together ecosystem. Some companies, a la Samsung, are much better. But there's also a fraying of the ecosystem, and by that I mean the Huawei issue. right? So Huawei is a large handset maker, arguably number one from a unit shipment standpoint. So that model breaking as a result of the intellectual property force, as a result of the U.S. ban, et cetera, the market share is going to shift. And sure, some of it is going to Oppo, Vivo, Xiaomi. Some of it is going to go to Samsung. But there's also a trickle-down effect on Apple. People are going to say, if I'm going to buy a high-end phone, I want to be confident of, technology upgrades being very, very steady. I want my operating system to simply work. I want my backups to simply work, and I want my hardware and chips and my software to seamlessly work. And when you put that together, that's when Apple almost always wins. When you start talking about individual product ASPs, when you talk about individual items like camera, Apple will always lag behind. Screen, Apple always lags behind. But when you start putting the sort of the pie together, that's when Apple wins.